Welcome back to the channel. It's Chef Mark, and today we have a video recipe. It is winter, and that means for me butternut squash. I love butternut squash in a lot of different applications. I add it to my chicken noodle soup. I like to roast it, and I love serving it with a room temperature salad. Something that is got that flavor of winter and fall. So I'm going to show you an ingredient overview and how I whip this salad together. And of course I'll have a recipe in the description with some additional details. So let's take a look at what makes the autumn and winter butternut squash salad. Let's get started. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know I'm not a huge fan of recipes. I really think that a recipe is a guideline, and recipes really are more about the mechanics of cooking, what's going to make a tasty salad, good composition. So a couple of things I start with. I like a couple of red onions in salad, and whenever I do onions, I like to soak them overnight in cold water. That removes the astringency. It makes them palatable to the taste without having that strong bite. And then if you don't like onions and you're eating around them, it doesn't transfer as much flavor over to the other ingredients. Some red peppers, really mostly for color and crunch. You can cut them in whatever shape you desire. I would say if I was making this recipe, this salad, I would do maybe one red onion, 1 or 2 peppers. The amounts aren't critical. Really what's critical is just getting some of these ingredients combined. Okay, Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, these have both been blanched and shocked. If you're not familiar with blanching and shocking, I have a blanching and shocking video linked down in the description. Take a look at that. And of course with Brussels sprouts, I like to cook those till they're army green, so they take a while. What I do is I bring a big pot of water to a boil, make sure you season that heavily, and I cook them for a while. I'm always pressed, people ask me, how long? Cook them till they're done, right? I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes. But when these are about 90% done, I throw the cauliflower in there, in the same pot, just to get a little cook on that. Some kale, kale or arugula. Arugula's kind of got that spicy bite. I like kale because it holds up to vinaigrette. You can make this and let it sit out for several hours and it doesn't wilt as much. So I'm just using good old-fashioned kale. Make sure when you're tearing your kale, you kind of knead it a little bit, or what I call massage the kale. That helps keep it from being too crunchy. And then butternut squash. So I prefer to dice my butternut squash and roast this. I roast this with either just plain with a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, salt and pepper. If you must spice it up, Chinese 5 spice is very nice. This will give you all those winter flavors without having to go through the entire spice drawer and find a bunch of different spices. How do we dice butternut squash? Well, I have a video link in the description as well. You certainly can cut the thing in half, roast it whole, scoop it out, but I don't prefer that for so many reasons, mainly because you lose control. You don't have any control over the shape. Okay, and then so I'm going to roast off my butternut squash, and I'm also going to roast off, like kind of maybe even broil, just to get a little crunch on these other vegetables here, the Brussels sprouts and the cauliflower. So then when I toss all this together, I like to pull my butternut squash and the vegetables out of the oven, throw it in a big bowl with my raw kale and the other ingredients, and the residual heat will kind of help, not quite cook, but just kind of like meld the flavors together. And then finally, we've got a vinaigrette. So I make a gastric. Gastric is very simple. It's 1 part vinegar and 1 part sugar, put in a pot, bring to a simmer. Okay, so that is a very classic way to make that kind of sweet and sour flavor. And then I zest and juice 1 lemon into the gastric. And how much? Oh, I don't know. If I was forced to tell you an amount, half cup vinegar. It doesn't matter what kind of vinegar you use. Apple cider is fine. White vinegar, not balsamic. Balsamic, it almost has like it's too dark. It almost like stains the food. Okay, so gastric, lemon juice. If you just want to mix vinegar and oil in, you can do that too if you want to skip that step. Doesn't really matter. Again, recipes are just a guideline. Trust your senses. Finally, make sure you season heavily with salt and pepper. I like to add some extra virgin olive oil, toss, 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 put it on a big display tray, sprinkle maybe some crushed almonds on top, maybe some pomegranates, you know, just whatever the fall flavors and winter flavors you have. Put it on a nice big tray and off to the races. Conversely, you can saute these three ingredients together. You can saute the onions, the peppers, and the kale together. And as you pull out the roasted vegetables, toss it in a big bowl and serve it as a hot dish. That's what makes this such a wonderful and unique way to cook for the fall. Before we wrap up, why don't you go ahead and click the like button. Subscribe. Subscribing is free. And of course, leave in the comments, let me know if you make this salad, how your friends, family, and guests enjoyed it. All right, so in the winter, I always have butternut squash available in my refrigerator in stock. You can prep this several days in advance. You can blanch and shock all the vegetables. You can cut the butternut squash well in advance, up to 5 days in advance before you're serving this. I know that might seem like a long time out, but food will remain fresh if it's handled properly. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video recipe. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to reply. This is Chef Mark. Thanks for joining me in the laboratory.